Fall camp has come up. Well, reporting sometime this week. We're going to talk about that and more here on the Sooner or Later Sports Show, presented by these people. Here's Coop. I'm Jay. Thanks for pulling up here on the YouTube channel and listening wherever podcasts are downloaded and listened to. While you're here, please wipe your feet, like, subscribe, rate, review, give us 5 stars. You don't think we deserve it? Go ahead and just give us 5 anyway and gift it. So, on today's episode of the Sooner or Later Sports Show, me and Coop got a lot of cool things to dive into, like questions in regards to fall camp. Everything starts on Wednesday, so we got our questions. We'll talk about Jim Naggie's round of interviews, as he has been for real, like talking. And we'll wrap things up. We'll talk SEC rankings and take all of your questions like we always do. So let's have ourselves, once again, a really good time. Coop, happy Sunday. As our guy, Red Dirt Sports, points out, get in the water. It's time to get in the water. How you feeling, my man?
I wish I was in some water right now. It's hot outside. My kid wanted to go, she got a new softball bat, and so she wanted to go outside and have that pitch to her a little bit. And man, it is hot. It is hot. I have a little ice pack like back here just behind my back, just because I came in just a few minutes ago. So, but no, I wish that I had some water to dive into. RDS, same here. But
get in the water.
If you're wondering what he means, it means, hey, listen, we're going to make some waves this year. And he is encouraging, and I know a lot of people who are pessimistic are encouraging everybody to open your heart for hurt once again. But man, it's good because, yeah, you said fall camp. I mean, it's just it's later this week. They are going to be reporting, and they're going to get down to business.
So, I mean, I get a lot of people don't understand the concept of quote unquote getting in the water, but at the same time, you say you wish you had some water today. Let's think about this. It's hot. Wouldn't that be like getting into a hot tub based upon the weather it is today?
It's better than sitting in the backyard with the what do we got, the 6 o'clock sun beating down on you and nothing but a bunch of grass, and sprinklers just went off too. It's nice little humid grass. So, but yeah. No, Robert, the mansion does not have an indoor and outdoor pool. We got a 7-year-old crazy child, and I wouldn't trust him with a sprinkler right now. So, no pool yet.
Coop line, he got a big old pool over there in that massive mansion of a backyard he has. But we won't talk about that. What we're going to jump into is, first off, thank y'all for pulling up. Hit the like button. If you're new to the channel, subscribe, rate, review, give us 5. The other thing to point out here, and I love this comment here, we have a 70% ratio, so we can win the Natty in 25. Yes, that is true. That is what a lot of this stuff is measured off of. We're going to jump into that, but first, fall camp does start Wednesday. Players report on Wednesday, so they're probably in town tomorrow, getting themselves acclimated, chilling, probably lifting weights, all that jazz. But fall camp starts. You'll have weigh-ins. You'll have all of that stuff down, and there's a lot of questions that we all have for Oklahoma. There's of course, we're not going to lie to you and say there's no concerns, because, let's be real. There's always concerns out there. But the other question is, outside of the quote unquote concerns, Coop, we need to ask ourselves what's real that we should be asking about for this team going forward. So I'm looking at this, Coop, and I have my first question to you. When we coming into fall camp, I want to talk defensive line. Who do you think pulls up in that bad boy over 300 pounds? And yeah, Coop, turn your volume up a little bit.
I might just have to talk louder. I was not talking very loud, so there we go. If you can hear me now. Over 300 pounds. I mean, I think you're in Jackson come in over 300. I think you're going to have Dom Williams come in right around that action. David Stone, we've already heard. We've heard a couple different numbers hovering right around the 310 range. So you've got him in there. I would say G Baby is going to be just slightly under. Man, let's see here. I would say that is, as far as like the D tackles, I mean, the guys that I'm, probably feeling pretty good. I know Nigel is approaching, I think he's approaching the 290, 285,
range. 290
range.
on the latest weigh-in. He was about 290.
Yeah, so he's getting up there. I feel like there's somebody I'm forgetting here. Who do you think here? Because my brain shut down. It's overheated. I said too many.
Yeah, you was outside.
3 sentences.
Doing the Lord's work in this heat. That's not something I want to participate because it's hot outside. No, when I'm looking at trenches, I'm looking, of course, on the 300-pound mark on the interior. So we know Stone. We know Trent Wilson is over 300. We know that Ace Hodge, Dom, David Rawaye, Jaden Jackson, as well as Ricky Lolohea are all over the 300-pound threshold. Yep. The ones you have left, Grayson Halton, 292, Jacob Henry, 295, Nigel Smith at 290. Those are the ones that we're waiting for. And I think Jacob Henry comes in over that mark.
I think so.
And I think Grayson Halton scratches it. I don't think he actually comes in at 300. I think he stays in the 290-ish range with his capabilities. Marcus Strong is probably the one I think that actually surpasses 300 well. He was 303 in the spring, but he was down to like 297 when they did the most recent roster on the site. So I'm thinking he probably goes right back over 300 and maintains that.
Yes. I mean, that's why there's a lot of people. There's a lot of names right there. I remember circling back like 2 years ago, going into year 2, talking about how we decided that there were more than just like 5 or 6 different defensive players on the whole side of the ball that we were excited to, that could, go out there and not be a liability. Now this defensive tackle, especially the defensive tackles, I mean, that's why a lot of people have them as, maybe the best defensive line in the SEC or maybe even the country, is because of the depth. It's because you're rolling in quite a few guys. There's a lot of excitement around Stone, but the guys answered the bell last year with a lot of people like Nick Saban saying, don't know if they could hold up in the SEC. Well, they obviously did hold up in the SEC. They came in there and, with the defensive efficiency numbers, top 15 in the country. And so it is going to be, I myself am not super worried about the defensive tackles. I think up the middle, we look gravy.
Yeah, there's a lot of big mufus into it. The biggest thing is a lot of big mufus. We've got the size that we needed, and this size that we have here is, I mean, it reminds me a lot of what we had coming out, what BV had at Clemson. This is the size of the players that he had as he built upon things, and at some point he got to where this is what he wanted, big boys. So like you said, first year, and Bates talked about it, I remember going into year 2, year 1, they only had like 1, maybe 2 people over 300 there. Yeah. And then year 2, they had like 7 or 8. And in year 3, we had roughly, I think 3 when the season started, and it increased to like 4 or 5 by the season went. But this year, we've got all but like 3 players on the defensive line. So we've got, what's this? Not the sum. I need the total. We got 11 players. 8 of them are over 300 easily. That's a massive improvement.
That's what you want
in the interior that you want. And then you've got, what's this? 1, 2, 3, 4 dudes for 310. That's what you need in order to exist in the or survive the SEC, if anything, right? To be able to stop the runs and everything. So, I'm pretty excited about that size. All right, what's next, Coop?
I mean, the defensive ends. I mean, this is the point where I think the defensive tackles are undoubtedly going to be great playmakers. And I think that they are going to be able to hold up. You're going to be able to rotate guys in. So, now I think that it's Bates to be able to have those conversations with, with his guys. What's the rotation look like? How long do you let, a Don Williams sit out there? How long do you let a David Stone, a Jaden Jackson? Jaden's going to be coming back from the shoulder cleanup. So, he's probably going to, need a little bit more time to get that strength back in and that punch back in. So, that's why he makes the good money that he makes. But the defensive ends are where, the defensive statistics can take leaps and bounds and push you from top 25 in the country to top 20 to top 15 is the defensive line. And so the edges, we saw R. Mason Thomas last year really show up in some really, really great moments, some big moments. We saw him not only put chaos in the backfield, but absolutely take over multiple games, Jay. And I want to see what can we get on the other side, because God bless Ethan Downs. That guy was just reliable. You knew who he was, you knew what he was, and he was that in and out, day in, day out. So now, who takes the mantle on the other side? And can you develop a very, very consistent pass rush? Robert put it in here. Taylor Wine, coming in right in the 270, 275 range. Also run. Also, I believe 6'4", 6'5"-ish. So you add some size on that side. PJ Adebaware, Danny Okoye. You got a lot of tools to work with on the outside. And if this defensive line really wants to go from, hey, they're very good, to this is an elite and the best one in the country, you got to have the multifaceted capabilities from the outside to not only hold the edge and stop the run, but then also to put pressure on the quarterback, when you're running 4 in, when you're only taking, only sending 4 in. That way you can, really, keep the coverage up. So that's one thing that's a question that I have going into fall camp, because our Mason, I know kind of what we expect out of him. He told us in the SEC media days, he put some extra weight in because he wanted to be better at the run. What does the other side happen? Because we've been waiting for PJ. He's a 5-star guy. Taylor Wine is the up-and-comer. He's the guy that I really want a lot of people to keep an eye on him. Danny Okoye, he's a freak of nature. How can he get in there and mix stuff up? And if this defense really wants to take a step and be, feared, it's going to be because of that defensive end.
So the next question we have on here is going to go towards the offensive line. For me, is who steps up and takes that left tackle spot? We know that there are plenty of options on the offensive line for that, from Jacob Session to Logan Howland, Michael Fasusi. That left tackle spot is going to be the most coveted position here on this team. So I'm curious, who's the one that's going to jump out? We have an idea of what the offensive line is going to look like, but that left tackle spot to me is probably the one that has those questions going into fall camp, if you look at it. Or am I wrong?
You are absolutely right. Going into last year, there were a lot of concerns, or not concerns, but questions about the offensive side of the ball. But it all started with the offensive line. And this year, we don't have a Philadelphia State, week 2 to roll in on. You got Michigan that comes to town. And so you're going to have a group that is, obviously they're still going to be putting some things together, but I think the thing that we can rely on, what's the stuff that we can rely on? We don't know what this offensive line is going to look like, but we can rely on that. Number one, you've got experience. Going into last year, Jay, you brought it up. There's a lot of a lot of guys who had potential, but there wasn't a lot of snaps. Now you have a lot of snaps. You said it, with Jacob Sexton. This is a guy who, going into that Florida State game, everybody was really excited about what he was going to be for the future. and injuries and just rotational issues have really created kind of a pause on his development. So can he take that spot and become that next guy? Logan Howland does the shoulder surgery that he had. Now that he's back in action, what is he going to do? Is he going to go out and go, no, I held this down at the end of the season. We showed improvement. This is who I am. And then can they keep Fasusi off the field? I think I said in our Discord, what's the average snaps that he has per game at 20 and a half? Because you have an investment in Fasusi. You know what he has got the capability of becoming. And so the offensive line is going to dictate what the ceiling is for this team. I think I think that's where you have to start, Jay, is the offensive line. And if they can come together, and if you can put together 5 guys who can do what they want to do and accomplish the goals that they have in front of them, this team has this team's limit is sky high.
And I think that when you look at the left side, because I think the right is for the most part established. I think Derek Simmons ends up winning that job. You don't bring him in and him practice the way rumor has it that he practiced. He doesn't really take that position. But you're right. The question truly is how long before you see Fasusi and Fogier on the field. Like I said, there's no shade against any of the players that we currently have on the team. We know that those two were very highly coveted players that should do something to push themselves into more rotation. And when I look at the left side, it's tough. Sexton, unfortunately for him, was basically in and out between left tackle and left guard last season, so you didn't really get to see which one he was his strongest at. And remember, in 23, he didn't play until late in the season, and he basically played right tackle for Tyler Guyton because Sexton tore his ACL at the Florida State in the Cheez-It Bowl, like before the game started. So you didn't got to see what Sexton really is as he's moved around so much. So that question is, I think the one game, he played fully in that Bama game. You got a glimpse. You got an idea of, okay, so this is what it's supposed to look like when he's at his healthiest, but you don't know yet. Like, you don't know. Now, Logan Howland had his initial moments of meh, but then he gave you some good stuff as the season progressed. Same thing with Jay. But, and size-wise, when I looked at them, they're all in very good weight. Like, Sexton's still at the 330 range, and he's still got good mobility and movement. Jake Taylor's at 313, so he's put on a lot of weight. Logan Howland's 322, so he's put on a lot of weight as well. Susi comes in at 309, but that boy's strong, and you've seen good stuff. So,
yeah,
we got to see what it looks like going forward. But you also remember, though, Fogier and Fasusi are true freshmen. Like, it's not common for true freshmen to just walk out there and get on the field immediately, regardless of how good they are. There's always growing pains. Caden Proctor is considered the top offensive lineman in the country. His true freshman year was not very good. Look at it. He had a lot of moments that were not the best. He started and he was good. He was a good true freshman overall, but to start the season, it was not the best. And, he was targeted mainly because he's a freshman. And if you know me, I talk about this often. I don't like true freshmen starting at the beginning of the year. Midseason, I'm cool with it. Beginning, I have more concerns because freshmen are going to do freshman things. They're young. They're going to make mistakes. And a lot of those times, you don't want them to make live mistakes, especially against good talent. That Michigan game would scare me for a true freshman. Just because I know that defensive line would completely focus their attention on them. That doesn't mean that they won't hold up. But, man, that still terrifies me. I don't care what anybody says.
And I want to go back because you were talking about Sexton and, in that Ole Miss game, when Sexton was in there, he got hurt right before halftime. Yep. We were controlling things on the offensive line pretty well. And then that's when Howland came in and started telegraphing his drop, and they ate the boy up. So, I mean, like you said, I think that, speaking to somebody here, we were talking to somebody a couple of weeks ago, and they said, really there's one spot that is pretty much, set in stone at this point, or locked up, on the offensive line. And you've got a lot of great opportunities for guys like Jake Sexton, Jake Taylor. Jake Taylor looks like he is pissed, and he all the stuff, and he was, frustrated with the injuries. When it all breaks down, I'm going to take a Missouri, mentality with this offensive line. We have heard that they took it to heart. You hear these things, NFL, college football, basketball, everything. You hear these things all the time where, we had a bad year. We come together. We've heard in the offseason, the offensive line have been working together as a group, reading the film, seeing film together, working together. You've seen the recent pictures. Jake Taylor looks like he got the hookup with the roid connection. Dude just looks like a monster.
They look jacked.
But I'm going to take the Missouri State of mind. It's the show me state, and we have to see it. We have to see, did all that stuff, what does that amount to? Because if you've been watching film together and you've been working your butt off and you're much, much bigger, but you still play like ass, it's not good enough. And you don't want Fasusi to be out there out of necessity. You want for him to take a spot, somewhere mid-season because he took it from somebody, not because it defaulted and fell into his lap. Because if Fasusi's out there, it either means that he is light years above Sexton and Howland, and guys like Autry Dent and guys like who have already been in the program for a couple years, or that they fell off and he was just the next option. But I do wonder what happens, and I think it may have been Gabe and Teddy, may have been the Sooner Scoop. During the summer, I don't listen to a lot of the pods, but while mowing, I plowed through several of them and caught up the other day. But if Sexton, did get unseated because of great play by Fasusi, I think that whoever is right next to Fasusi, it's going to have to be somebody with a lot of experience, because you want some experience sitting next to him. So could that mean a guy slides over there into the left, that left guard spot, like Fabichi Wewu, and maybe an EPL on the right guard spot? Like those things are going to come around, and Bill Bedenbaugh likes to tinker, and so the offensive line, I still say, Jay, is we're hearing all the stuff. Now show us, because that's what we see. And God, just sacrifice a live chicken, a giraffe, whatever we need to do to make sure that we keep the injury bug away.
That's a good question there. If they decide to put Fasusi in at left tackle, what experienced person would end up at guard? Because, expectations right now is that EPL takes the left guard spot as we wait to see how healthy Heath Ozaida is, because he had to have that cleanup procedure as well. So that's an interesting one. I wonder how that would be handled, and if you would move. I mean, you technically could probably move Wewu over to the left, or you put Ozaida there, put EPL on right, and just have Wewu be your swing, and consistently kind of, every so often give him a break and allow him to go out. That's an intriguing thought. I didn't think about it that way. That's something to consider. Okay, next question I have is, going into fall camp, who's going to be your first, your two outside wide receivers going into week 1 and week 2? I know BV talked about Giovanni being out of the boot and being on pace when it comes to playing. I guess he's on track for potentially showing up at the beginning of the season. He never said which game, though. I know that he mentioned before that he thought that both the Gibson boys would be ready week 1, but I don't expect them to make either one of them play anything
significant
before Temple, if I want to be 100% honest. But the question is who's going to end up being your outside players in week 1. To me, I'm still thinking Lewis and Kearney are your two guys that you go with. Bigger size wide receivers, both fast. And now we get to see ZK's route running capabilities. How much has he grown? But you'll still have, luckily, Burks and Satania in the slot to get stuff done, which I loved hearing. I think Ben said that about Satania, that he's the one player that if you want something done, you have Satania go out there and do it. So question is, who will emerge through fall camp as your outside wide receivers?
I'm going to probably say the same as you. I heard the date that Giovanni got out of the boot, July 1st. And, you look at 4 to 6 weeks, 4 weeks is tomorrow. So that's where you get a chance to start doing some work. So how long does it take for him to get out there, go through the post treatments and stuff like that? So, with Illinois State being week 1 and, we started off the show talking about hot. I will say start hydrating now for week 1 because it is going to be hot as
Scorcher.
hell.
Scorcher.
It is going to be bad.
Scorcher.
Get you some Bagman water. I think that's going to be, it made Jay take a drink just talking about it. But I hear, Zion Kearney is one of my favorite recruits over the past couple of years. And it's hard, I would almost say, obviously like a running back, if you're a running back running through the hole and you have to stiff arm somebody, your whole bag of tricks after that point are kind of limited because you don't have the full freedom of full range of movement. And I think that last kind of how this game was played is, there wasn't a lot of time to go out and do stuff and then come back to the sideline and, get coaching because they had to be back out on the back out on the field. You had to have that help happen. And so, I think that I like your two selections. Whoever it is, Jay, inside, outside, as far as wide receivers, here's the one thing that I say. Make the play in front of you and then go to the next play. It is one play at a time, whether it's a blocking assignment, whether it's a route. Too many times last year we saw guys, break the wrong way. Inside when they're supposed to go outside when they're supposed to be inside. A 3-yard dig instead of a 6-yard dig. There was a lot of that stuff, and I think that, kind of just going back to why the offensive line is so important is the same thing with the stiff, scenario is if the offensive line holds up and is able to, give great protection, the wide receivers and Mateer, they're going to find openings, and you got to make the play in front of you. Because I do think that we have, by season's end, you're going to have 8 to 9 guys that are going to be able to run out there at wide receiver with good experience. And so you're going to slowly get the health back. Michigan's going to have a good defense, and they're, though they lost 2 first-round, defensive men, there's going to be some quick stuff. So what do? Can you run the routes on the outside or even on the slant? Because, watching Mateer and watching some of the film from his highlights from last year, they kind of had a fall off, and the Wyoming game was what it was. But they lost three of their last games because two of those games they were also in scoring at 40. And Mateer will find you, and he does not give up. He will continue to. So you as a wide receiver need to absolutely just get yourself available, and when the ball comes your direction, do what you need to do with it. Live to play another down. Don't be out of the don't go above and beyond yourself, because that's when we did find success on offense last year, Jay, we gave the ball right up. Jackson had 9 fumbles. I feel like Taylor Tatum had 5 or 6 fumbles. There were fumbles galore when we finally got some momentum going. And so these wide receivers, I have it written down right here. Make the play in front of you. That's it. That's all you got to worry about.
Last question from fall camp. You want this one, Coop? Or you want me to throw another one out there?
Defensive back, Jay. And I don't know if you agree with me on this one. And I'm just going to say on the corners. We got to get healthy. Can these guys be healthy? Gentry, this is a first round All SEC type of talent that you have in Gentry. If he is able to go out and give us that, and Bowen after his deals with his ankle, he comes back and he's ready to go. Those are your two starters. And with that being said, I think that those could be two of the best defensive backs in the SEC, and that's I didn't say the best, two of best, and because the SEC has lots of defensive back talent, and I don't know, there's not a massive group of superstar receivers in the SEC. You've got some of the higher ends like the Ryan Williams, the Cam Colemans. You've got some of the young guys at Texas. You're going to have guys who are going to be able to make plays at wide receiver, and so you've got to be able to have the defensive backs hold in, and whether it is in a press coverage situation, whether it is in coverage. The good news is I think the defensive line is going to give you a lot of help, and there's going to have to be a lot of quick reads. So you want to keep those guys out of that realm to where they're covering guys for 7, 8, 9, 10 seconds. You got to get the pressure on them. Also, when we do head into the zone coverage, we're gonna every single one of these corners are going to be faster than what we were throwing out there last year with Woody Washington and Malone. Those guys were running 4.7, 4.8s. These guys are all faster. So how do you play your quarters, play your section, play your territory in the zone coverage? Because I think going back with the defensive edge, if you've got the D tackles, the edge guys, and the defensive backs all, at the top end of the league, you got a recipe for a really, really salty defense.
Health is the critical question there. Corner spot. Gentry, it sounds like, of course, he like you said, he sounds like he's healthy. If he shows up healthy, you're good. Eli Bowen still dealing with the ankle stuff. It sounds like if he shows up with, enough, I think you're fine. For me, if Eli is still dealing with said problem, you really don't need him until probably SEC play. And I say that because, and this is honestly the only question/concern of in the secondary. Michigan's going to be a physical game of just tackling because they're going to run the ball like crazy. I saw one of the reports out there, actually, I think, about Michigan. They don't even know who their starting quarterback is yet, which, granted, I get. It's going to take time to figure that out. Underwood's a true freshman. If you've just heard me about 15 minutes ago say this, I'm not big on starting true freshmen for particular reasons. And being the game of the season, that's a tough game to have your guy play in a very tough environment at the beginning of within your first two games. That makes me nervous. If that was us, I'd be nervous regardless of how good I think a player is as a true freshman. I would not like a true freshman playing. But I digress. For me, it's, do you want to play Gentry in a game that's going to be just a ton of tackling? Or would you prefer somebody else to play in that game? That would be the alternate question I'd have to what you asked, because that is the question. Because I feel like Michigan's going to be all tackling. It's going to be us hitting someone constantly. It's going to be less of us. It's less of us really playing in coverage, more of us coming downhill and stopping the running back, going up the middle. Because they're going to try to bully and push us around. No different than they did against Alabama, the 2 bowl games they played against them. No different than, they did against Ohio State, against them. Anyway, they're going to just try to bully you. I'm wondering, what does that look like going forward, especially for the secondary?
And I'll wrap it up and say this is, you've got guys like Jacoby Johnson who are bigger bodies. Jacoby was, had a lot of snaps last year, and he did a lot of great stuff. And then, we got so bad in the wide receiver situation that we had him over on that side of the ball. Jeremiah Newcomb, hearing a lot of great things over the summer for Newcomb. And, again, that's another corner that you can throw out there. I see in there that people are already talking about Kendall Dolby. Kendall Dolby does a great job in covering slot receivers. And I don't know if they're going to put him on the outside per se, but Dolby ain't going to be no slack. Yeah.
I would. He likes to hit people.
He does, and obviously that's how he got hurt, was digging in, and he was up in the middle of a pile of about 7 guys and got rolled up on. So I think that you've got a lot of great options, and we're at a spot. And I was listening to one of the pods, and they broke off in mid sentence, and they were like, we're so used to not having so many different guys that can go out there and do things at a high level. And that's where this defense is. You've got 3 years under BV, you've got a new crop of guys out there, and you need to have a lot of the defensive backs. It's not for lack of talent. It's how do you go, because I don't think that we're looking for the defensive backs to go from bad to good. We're looking for them to go from good to great. And I think that's where we're going to see a lot this year. And a great stat here, Georgia won the SEC and finished 89th. We know that BV is not afraid to march, let the guys, march in and out and, stop them down in the goal line and in the red zone. I just want to see some good stuff from those defensive backs. You hold those big receivers like Orion Williams. We saw what Eli did to him last year. Mm-hmm. And now, granted, I think that the quarterback was shook, and he didn't really want to mess around and throw anything. And once you get a quarterback shook, as a wide receiver, it's hard because you don't know if the guy is going to be running or if he's going to toss the rock. So we got options. That's it. And like I said, if you are out there wondering what's the team going to be looking like, I don't think that we're hoping that the defensive backs are going to be good. I think we're going to see, can they be great?
Yeah, that's where we're at there. So it's a good point. Well, there's a ton of questions. We'll keep talking about fall camp here over the next few days. We'll be for that, of course, probably during the week. We may do something on Wednesday since it's the first day of camp. You'll see interviews coming out. If I'm correct, the media gets an opportunity to talk to everybody after that. So keep your eyes open. We'll probably plan something to go live on Wednesday. But thank y'all for pulling up. Hit the like button. New to the channel, subscribe, rate, review, give us 5. Coop. Jim Naggie has been doing a press tour, basically. Even more since SEC Media Day. He was on the Dari Noka show over on KREF. Make sure you check that out. Dari's awesome. I got to interview him as well and chop it up with him for a bit. He is dope. Nagy went on there recently and kind of expanded even more on the things that we've been talking about in regards to what their game plan is when it comes to recruiting and all of that stuff. He's gone in interviews. He had to meet with Nagy. What was that, on Thursday night? Sad that I was actually on a plane from Oregon coming back, so I didn't get to go. I wanted to go, but work called. But that was one that you got even more out of. Is there anything that jumped out to you when you saw and heard Nagy talking with all of those outlets as of late?
It's not lip service, and I think that is the 10,000 foot view. It's not lip service. I mean, he has a plan. Is a plan that the coaching staff agrees on. He made the point to go out and say, listen, these guys don't have to go out and coach an SEC football team and dig through hours and hours and hours of film, whether it's a grad student, whether it is an assistant coach, whether it's, Jay Belay himself. These guys aren't having to go through and dig all these hours trying to figure out and, what is going on. And that's why him and his staff did were hired into this position. These guys,
I think that's the one thing I liked the most about this, the way the hiring went, and Nagy pointed that out, was we're taking a lot of the work off of the coaching staff's plate so they can focus on coaching, which I think as fans y'all should appreciate that, right? So one less thing for your coaching staff to have to do is grind tape of high schoolers while at the same time grinding tape of the opposing teams that they prepare for in the season. Having, 7 people on staff basically do majority of that and line this up based upon what they know the coaching staff likes, or just players that are good enough. I think that's a great thing, right?
do you really want to be watching Bartlesville versus Dewey? And
really.
Bartlesville's my alma mater. We celebrated our 25th reunion. I did not go, but that was last night. So I mean, but you don't want to be digging into that. Going, is there somebody there that we can look at? Because I don't know if everybody here knows this, but anytime that you're a football coach and you feel like you got a stud, you're reaching out to schools. You're reaching out to Oklahoma State. You're reaching out to Tulsa. You're reaching out to Kansas. You're reaching out to Oklahoma and saying, hey, when you come this way, you need to come through here and take a look at this guy because, I mean, he's just an absolute stud. And to that coach, that may be extremely accurate. But I'm just saying, like I said, if you're Miguel Chavis and you're digging in and you're seeing that, school A in, 2A Texas or 2A Kansas or 2A Maryland has this dude who's, 6'4", 210 pounds, and he is just wrecking shop. And then you look at him and you're like, yeah, it's hard to go, well, let me go ahead and plan a trip up to Maryland just to go see maybe if this guy is somebody. And so now Nagy, and that's, Jay, has Nagy developed, not developed, but has Nagy uncovered talent in multiple different arenas in his career? Yes. He was
questionable. Kidding.
He was the guy who was finding folks to come to the Senior Bowl that teams would want to see. He was hooking the NFL franchises up with the guy from Western Carolina, the guy from Appalachian State, the guy from, a JUCO. He was going to find those because he's looking for the elite traits. And I think that that's one of the big things that he says is, hey, listen, keyboard warriors online, I love you all, and I'm here to make this place better. But without saying it, like, I know what I'm talking about, and you have great opinions.
I like that way that he kind of he really threw out there hey, this is why we have a massive staff of people watching film to grind it. And of course, he continuously reminded everybody, and I think this is kind of what I want to tell everybody here today. He kept reminding everybody that everything he said had nothing to do with him determining if he's going to 5 stars or not. What he did say, and he said this actually too, he recently said that the last regime did not have very good luck with 5 stars. Some of our favorite players have been 3 stars so far. But more so, what he wanted to point out to everybody has been, you're going to have a mix. Like every recruiting class that we've ever seen, everybody's got 3s, 4s, and 5s. Right now, our blue chip ratio is at 70%. And this is why I wanted to point this out. This is the 2026 class. This class, which won't sign until December, officially in February, won't be on campus until sometime in 2026, which means in 2 years, 3 years technically from today, which will be 2028, there'll be redshirt freshmen or true sophomore. That's probably when you're most likely going to get them to be effective on this roster. So what everybody's doing right now is freaking out about this 2026 class, which has 15 commits so far. They're freaking out about 2028. Today's team is built off of top 10 recruiting class, 22, 23, and 24. Y'all do realize that, right? The team that we're playing this year and next year are built off of those top 10 classes. I understand that you want to see the full force too. But the other thing is that with the instability of college football today, we're still waiting to see what things are going to get enforced or not. Believe me. They've got a list of kids. And Nagy even said this in the interview I had with him. He said that during media week, he said that on Tuesday, they're re-implementing and redoing their big board. They have the coloring system. And he mentioned it in another interview. They have like blue for your top players, which I think is blue chips. And then other colors for other players to keep their eyes on it that they work with the staff on. The staff identifies somebody, they talk about it, they add them to the list, and they do evaluations and figure out the risk reward of going after this player. That includes 5s, 4s, 3s, 2s, 1s, zeros. They also, Coop, have a list of players they're going to go after during this year that they feel like are flip candidates. So, do not be surprised if you hear about Oklahoma trying to flip kids all season long. Because the one thing that makes recruiting easier is winning games. As Georgia. When Saban was at Bama and it started coming up, guess what they used to get? They used to get kids on the Saban's count. Kids would take less to go play for Nick Saban. Because Bama did not have a robust NIL at the time. I remember Saban losing his mind, and these recordings always came out. Saban, quote unquote, begging for money. But it was more so Saban reminding the boosters that, hey, you want us to keep getting these top kids, y'all gonna have to come in here. And him making them public, putting them out there publicly, which helped Saban's case. It made those boosters have to look retroactively into this, look into themselves, look in the mirror and say, oh, yeah, we got to figure something out. Oklahoma's done something similar, which our NIL is actually pretty good. We just don't spin just to spin. They try to be smart about it, which is how you win players like Michael Fasusi and Ryan Fauché. Remember, they were top players in there. You've got others going back in the other classes. I always have to try to remind everybody of this, Coop. It seems like people forget that we did get top players, and we still have a 70% blue chip ratio. But we're also going to be living in the transfer portal too. That's how you get a Jaden Ott, who's considered, quite frankly, it's kind of, if you want to see something surprising, when you saw the all SEC teams come out and Jaden Ott was the number 2 running back in the SEC, transferring from Cal, a inferior conference, everybody thinks, media-wise, that he's going to be one of the best running backs in the SEC. That should tell you enough, right? And, he was a 4-star out of Chino, California, so he was a good player. We'll do that as well. We'll go after those particular mercenary positions, which I think are running back and wide receiver. That will help. So, Coop, I liked that he's been doubling and tripling down on his philosophy, especially because in his explanation, granted, we only got 15 players, he's pointing out specifically, we got into this downstream. I didn't start till March. We're downstream in 26 because signing day is going to be December. We've got to ramp things up, but that's what we're doing. So give us the time to do it. Especially because I think Lake Dawson was hired, in June?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he was hired in June.
And you don't just hop in. You just hop in and start these relationships unless it's just an absolute, hey, here's a mass NIL check. But these relationships, were started when these kids were sophomores, when these kids, were entering in their junior year. And I will say this is don't be surprised if you see guys like, Bo Bentley, the Jandreau kids, Ruxer, watch these guys. These guys are going to actually rise a little bit too. And when you start seeing them putting these elite traits out on the on the football field their senior season, and they're going to rise. These things are going to happen. Bo Bentley, not very many people who knew Bo Bentley was before last year.
Nope.
You do a lot of winning, and all of a sudden your name gets a little bit more shiny. And you can't look at, the Jandreau kids and be like, man, I don't think these guys are going to amount to much. They're just 3 stars. Like, these are the guys that you're going to look in here in a couple of years, and you're like, do they got another brother that we can get in here?
Right.
There's a lot of guys. Ja'Cory Smith's another one of those guys that I think is going to be an absolute stud who's going to rise. Derek Johnson, dude comes from absolute phenomenal pedigree. Dad played the NFL. He was he's a stud too. Just watch. So these guys are going to have some rising, and then I saw that. But I do. I think from a fan perspective, if we don't have a great year, and we had a great recruiting class right now, it's all gone. But if you go out and you throw a good year, which is what the coaching staff is, they go out and they're expecting a really, really great year. And what? All these conversations where guys, maybe they weren't 100% sure and going, diving deep on. Now they got senior film. And there's going to be several guys who are going to have the opportunity to make a second thought about Oklahoma.
Yeah, Lake Dawson was hired around June 5th. So the beginning of June. So that's one of the last set of pieces you do to add to your staff has been roughly, we're about to go on 2 months. So yeah, it's going to take some time. Things are going to look rough right now, and that's okay. We've still got to December, folks. Keep in mind when it comes to how this recruiting stuff is going to progress. Thank y'all for pulling up. Hit the like button if you're new to the channel. Subscribe. If you're listening, rate, review us. Give us 5. Coop, I've got some additional questions. We're going to wrap things up with this. I want to talk SEC ball. And I did not tell Coop what I was going to ask him because I did not want him to be too prepared. I wanted this to come off the top of his head because I want us to have a nice discussion. And then we're going to pull these questions. I've got a bunch of questions starred, and we're going to jump in and talk about. First off, let's ask this question here, Coop. The SEC last season had 5 teams finish with double digits last year. Double-digit wins. Texas, Georgia, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Missouri. 5. If it is the same this year, that there will be 5 teams that will win 10 games this year, who do you think are the 5 teams that will win 10 games this year?
Oh, man. I can say that Tennessee and Missouri are probably not going to be in that crew this year. I would say I feel good about Bama. I think Bama is going to, I feel good about Bama. I myself have picked OU at 10-2. So I'm going to throw Oklahoma in there. I would say I think Texas has a year to where they're going to be right in that area. I would not be surprised if it's a 9-3 finish. LSU. So is that 5? Bama, Georgia, OU, LSU, potentially Texas.
Okay.
But I will say this, Jay. I would say that it is more likely that we have a logjam than a bunch of teams with 10 wins.
That's the point, because looking at it, you had 3 teams that went 9-4, Bama, LSU, South Carolina, and then you had 2 teams go 8-5 with A&M and Florida. So it's a good point. If I was to pick 5 teams that I think could win 10 games this season, I'm in a similar boat as you. The bigger issue is some of these teams' schedules really makes it easy for the point. Like Missouri's, it is literally lined up perfectly for them to win 10 games. With them, I think they don't have a road game. They play all home games up until like mid-October. Like, I think it's like, mid to late October is, let me go pull up my handy dandy SEC schedule sheet.
I like it.
Missouri has a home game every week up until they play Auburn on the 18th. Then they got Auburn and Vanderbilt on the road. And then they wrap the season up on the road against Oklahoma and Arkansas. So 4 actual road games that could mean that they could honestly win 10 games, if they could win at least 4 games in conference. The question is, can they win 4 games in conference with Arkansas, Mississippi State, Texas A&M, Vanderbilt, Auburn, and Alabama? I don't think that they hit 10 wins this year either. I actually think that Kansas knocks them off. 'Cause I think Jalen Daniels actually plays. That team actually plays better than they're supposed to. I think that that's probably one that's going to be tough. But if I was to pick 5 teams, I am with you. I think Bama gets 10. I do think LSU gets 10. I'm on the fence that there's a very good chance that South Carolina ends up with 10. There's a very good chance that Georgia still wins 10. And there's a very good chance that it's Texas or Oklahoma that also wins 10. So if I'm going to pick them, I'm going to say Alabama, LSU. I think South Carolina ends up doing it. I think Oklahoma does it as well. And I think Texas, as of right now, gets the other 10 wins.
Let me say this. I think by week 5 we will know who Alabama is.
Yep.
Because Jay, if you don't know if you realize this, week 1, very very hot day down in Tallahassee. They go to Florida State.
That's gonna be a fun game. I don't care what nobody says. It's gonna be a fun game.
It's gonna be a thick game, and I know that Florida State is an SEC special, to quote Kurt Signetti.
Yeah.
With in the words of The Rock, shut your mouth and know your damn role.
That annoys
me
about
played
them.
You played the one of the weakest. I don't want to hear crap from him. Anyway, so you got at Florida State, Louisiana Monroe, Wisconsin at home, at Georgia. Those are their first 4 games. Well, you get Grubbs back as the OC, and I will say that they were tied last year. You couldn't come in and it would almost be like Lincoln Riley coming into Oklahoma and having, Jalen Hurts as his quarterback year 1. It's all the stuff you like to do. It kind of off the table. So I think that whoever comes out as their quarterback right now, I'm guessing, and our boy here, Sharpshooter Pot, he is in the chat. Let us know what you think, because right now, I guess if the season starts today, it looks like Ty Simpson.
Yep, and I think that that's a smart pick. He's a former 5-star. He was number 25 in the country. He was the number 2 quarterback in his class. Yeah, Ty Simpson's most likely going to be your starting quarterback.
But Alabama gets those 4 going. Then they got Vandy and home. And I have a feeling that they may be a little upset with what happened last year. So I think that Vanderbilt may get their brains beat in that game, especially coming off at Georgia. You got Vandy at Missouri, Tennessee at home, at South Carolina, LSU at home, Oklahoma at home. You get the cupcake, Eastern Illinois and Auburn. So I think that they better do some really, really good stuff to get some going in that first 4. We'll know who they are. And then I want to point out South Carolina, because South Carolina, kind of the same situation, except for the middle of their schedule is an absolute beast. They got Kentucky at home, at LSU, at Oklahoma at home, Alabama at home, at Ole Miss, at Texas A&M. And then they end the season with Clemson.
Yep.
So you got some teams in here that the schedule looks a little tricksy. And I think that that's one of the big things that where I like our schedule is I like how the games are set up. With us going, Texas has to go to the Swamp the week before coming to see us in the Red River. That's going to be a tough game at the Swamp. No matter what Florida ends up being, I think that's just tough going down there. They're going to be absolutely riotous. So Jay, I wouldn't be surprised if Georgia has a year to where they kind of step back. And you heard Gabe and Teddy 2 weeks in a row. They said you get kind of either Kirby Smart is playing possum, or he's trying to prep people for hey guys, we got a lot of young folks on this team. Now they're all 5-stars and they all drive fast, but that was a jab at Georgia, just in case you didn't catch that one. But how does this thing start happening? Because if you don't have all that age and all that experience to kind of lean back into, if you're Kirby Smart, if something starts going sideways, do people start yelling at Kirby Smart for maybe it's time for you to hit the road, Jack? Because that's what they did to Mark Richt.
Yeah, fans are ridiculous. So of course, there's already fans saying that that Kirby Smart no longer has fastball. Hell, there were fans that were saying that Nick Saban didn't have his fastball anymore before he even retired. Then he went out. And I think he won a Natty that year when they really was all over him. And it is what it is. Fans are going to be ridiculous, but you're right. There's going to be some voices. It's going to be some louder voices in the back about Kirby Smart not having this team at 10 wins. And yeah, Gabe said he talked about it on the pod that Kirby sounds like, and this is kind of what and Chuck pointed this out, Kirby sounds like he doesn't feel like his team's going to be as strong. And I more of a, you got to see what you get out of Gunnar Stockton. The Carson Beck experiment was solid, but it didn't end up being the way that they wanted it to go. And now you're waiting to see what does Gunnar give you this year. Like, you don't have the big 5-star arm like you usually traditionally have there at Georgia that everybody realizes is probably as good as you want. And then you have the walk-on guy that walks up and takes over. We ain't seen that. We have that, but we'll see what Gunnar Stockton looks like. And I get where Kirby is on that. So I honestly think that they may end up with 9 wins this year. They're still going to be strong on defense. They're still going to be a threat. There's not much for me to look at them and say that they're not going to be great, but I don't think Ole Miss gets to 10 wins this year. I think that they get at most is to 8. But the Florida one you pointed out is a very interesting one. Like, I initially thought that Florida could sneak and get themselves to 10 wins. But the question I have about Florida is this. What does Lagway's shoulder look like? Now, granted, they've basically said that he's good to go. He's going to be balling. He's fine, blah, blah, blah. He didn't have a procedure. They just let it heal. But what the heck does that shoulder look like when we get into season? That is where I have nothing but questions about Florida going forward. I don't know what that shoulder looked like. If I knew what that shoulder looked like, I'd totally be like, yeah, they got this. But I don't know what that shoulder looked like.
Jay, dude didn't throw for months. And from a guy who has a destroyed shoulder, I didn't throw my senior season in high school. And as a pitcher, it's different game, right? Didn't throw. But once I got hurt my freshman year, I didn't have surgery, and then it didn't take long in my sophomore year before it was done. And football, and he's a big dude. This is a big dude.
He's my God, when he walked by me, I was just like this. Yeah, he's unreal huge. I didn't realize he was as big, wide, broad shoulder that he was. He looks like a quarterback. Yes.
Now, I absolutely love the running game. I think that if you're Florida,
fair one.
You don't need him to go out and be all SEC quarterback. You don't need him to go and throw the ball all over the yard. You need him to care for the football, 3 yards in a cloud and dust if you have to, and let your team. If Florida ends up at 10 wins and everybody is making fun of them and saying it is the ugliest 10-win team in history, it don't matter. That's a winning recipe for Florida this year. 10 is 10. And you've got Long Island University. Don't know if that's a college football team, but that's week 1. South Florida, a little bit of a test, right? It's not a scrub, but they ain't not a rollover. Then you're at LSU, at Miami, Texas at home, at A&M. You get to come home and play Mississippi State and then Georgia. This schedule is tough. At Kentucky, at Ole Miss, Tennessee, and then Florida State at home. So, again, kind of like I said, you're going to know what Bama is by week 5. Week 5 rolls around, we're going to have a pretty good idea. Do they have the juice to go out and do some damage? And again, injuries change everything. I think that you're putting a lot on that shoulder of Lagway. And it's LSU, Miami, Texas A&M. That's a 4-week span with a bye right between Miami and Texas. But
that's
I just Yeah, absolutely. So you're going to, if you're Florida, muck it up, win ugly. Because if you can go out and put 10 wins, I mean, hell, Florida's going to love if they win 9 games. If you can go do that, you're pointed up, especially with that schedule. And just like we're talking about with us, I think us in Florida, if you go 9-3, you're going to get talked about for the playoff because that's going to be a tough out to say. Now, if it's a mucky SEC and there's not some of these teams are not as good as they looked, maybe it's a different conversation. But still, it's going to be 9-3 in the SEC, and you're going to be able to point toward all those teams, unless you lose to the 3 best ones, and then maybe it's not the same conversation.
Yeah, and for them, the sucky part for Florida is they've got Miami and Florida State every year out of conference. So whenever you hear the Big Ten people gaslight everybody about playing, a stronger non-con, there's a lot of SEC teams that play a lot of P4 teams non-conference every year guaranteed. You've got Georgia Tech. You got Florida State, and Miami. You've got who is this? You've got South Carolina plays Clemson every year in season. You've got teams that match up against rivals non-con every single year guaranteed. So it's like, let's not pretend like they don't battle each other. There's some games that are always in there. Now, I mean, you mix in some other and I saw somebody talking about that. I think Barry Trammell talking about it recently, and we'll have to talk about that in another video. I don't want to take it up too much. I want to continue to talk SEC ball because he had some points, but there were some things that was completely missed when he talked about it. But got another one for you, Coop. Vanderbilt. Can Vanderbilt win 9 games this year?
Diego Pavia. This was another Gabe and Teddy comment, and I still remember because I was clearing out more poison ivy in between the fence right when they were talking about this focus because I didn't want to end up in the same situation I was in. Homeboy goes out and says he came back to win a national championship at Vanderbilt. I will say this. Vanderbilt's not sneaking up on anybody again this year. They kind of came up on folks, after the Bama win. They go to Texas. Texas handled them pretty well. The Vanderbilt, I'm going to pull up their schedule here. No, I don't think so.
They got Vitek. It says Charleston, South Carolina didn't count game 1. Vitek second, South Carolina third, Georgia State, Utah State, Alabama, LSU, Missouri, Texas, Auburn, Kentucky, and then Tennessee. I'll pull up the full schedule and put it on the screen so everybody can see it.
It's going to come down to this, Jay. They're going to have to get a couple of these teams. Alabama, LSU, Texas, and then at Tennessee at the end of the year. I don't think that Tennessee is going to be what they were even last year. But at the end of the year, they come into, at Tennessee. That could be, there we go. That could be a pretty a telling game for, positioning in the SEC at that point. I don't think they go to DKR and win. I don't think they go to Alabama. I think that Alabama game could be an ugly, ugly, ugly game. So I think that we get to see a lot from Vanderbilt. What do they do in week 3 against South Carolina? If they can go out and win that game or, be in a position to win that game, that may be able to tell us what is Vanderbilt. But I think that they snuck up on a lot of people last year. I don't necessarily think that that's going to be on the table this year.
I got an argument to make on that then. That Alabama game you said could be a bloodbath. Totally get you. Vanderbilt's hosting Utah State the week before, right? The Aggies. Nate Dryling's former team. He was the interim head coach there, and they didn't want to give him the job, so he ended up at Arkansas State. Now he's at Oklahoma. But Vanderbilt plays them the 27th after playing Georgia State, so back-to-back, pretty solid, quote-unquote games. Then they play Bama. Who does Bama play the week before they play against Vanderbilt? Coop?
Ray Charles.
They play Georgia.
Yeah.
They play Georgia the week before. They play Vandy. So if you got Bama playing Georgia at Athens, then they get to come home and play against Vanderbilt. Do we think that there is a chance, because that's going to be a physical game, and Georgia got revenge in their mind too after the way that game went down, that may be beneficial to Vanderbilt more than it is for Georgia?
Yes. I mean, absolutely yes. But I still think you come home no matter what happens, because if they go to Georgia and they lose that game to Georgia, who I think, like I said, Georgia, I fully believe is taking a step back this year. I think that they're going to have talent all over the field, but do they have a team? But regardless of how that game goes, you either get to lick your wounds and come home to play Vanderbilt, or you're feeling pretty mighty fine about yourself, and then you get to come home and take some revenge out. I'd say typically that was a trap game. I think if Alabama comes back and wins that game, maybe Vandy could get them this year. But I think that with the way that game went down, because, I mean, what was it, 40-35, I believe, last year? Hold on.
For Vanderbilt versus Vanderbilt versus
yes, 40-35 Alabama. And I mean, and they also came off of a bye. Vanderbilt came off of a bye after a double OT loss against Missouri. Yeah. So they had a bye before Bama.
Yep, they had a bye before Bama, which now they play Utah State, which is quote unquote a bye. And guess what? Guess where Bama came from the week before Vanderbilt last year? Playing Georgia at the crib.
Georgia.
You see now 100%. As my boy Brinsky would know, Sharpshooters Sports Talk. Go check him out here on YouTube. He will say, people will say, hey, they're gonna be locked in for this one. But that's kind of the thing out here, is that Vanderbilt came off that bye, and then they play, at the crib, and Bama came off that big time game against Georgia. I think that the schedulers were some a-holes by doing that a second year in a row. I don't care what nobody say. That's rude. It's disrespectful, and it felt pointed that they did that. But Diego Pavia's talking a lot of that yin yang, and I actually appreciate the fact that he's doing that. That he was the star at media days, dog. Like, he was the star.
I would definitely. I'd say this is. Gabe and Teddy said it. If Pavia played for Tennessee, if Pavia played for Missouri, A&M, anybody else, and he came back and he said that, people would have lit him up. Pavia is kind of untouchable. Pretty untouchable. And, I even saw somebody put out there on Twitter, like, I can't remember who the talking head they were tweeting at, but like the it factor, or like he was like, we need a stat for for like Diego Pavia, for guys that just get things done. I mean, they still lost 6 games last year. And South Carolina, they only scored 7 points. LSU 17, Tennessee 23. So, I mean, Pavia is a gamer. Dude averaged 160 some odd passing yards, 170 passing yards the last 6 or 7 games of the season. I think that we get a little enamored, because if that's they go 6-7 if they lost to that Alabama team. And I don't think people are talking about him as much.
It's fair, but
he's just one of those. He's like a super watered down, Baker Mayfield. He's got the coach, talking about those things too. I just wonder. Can they sneak up on anybody, or somebody saying, "Hey, man, Vandy, back in your place, Chief. Back in your chief."
I mean, people are saying that, but I think what's funny as we talk about this more is Pavia's got all of the sauce right now. Like he cares a lot about winning for this program, which is a big deal. Like I don't think people understand how big of a deal to me that is, that you've got a quarterback coming in here with this much confidence. You want that.
Filling the social medias, and filling the. That's your goal.
I love it. I love that out of him, and he actually has got me excited about watching Vanderbilt this season. I'm actually going to tune into them like crazy because another unknown fact or little nugget for everybody. Clark Lee last year was the defensive coordinator for the team. And he did it for one full season, brought in Tim Beck to run his offense. So he left Tim Beck do his thing, which we saw success out of it. They went 7-6. Don't get it twisted. That's success for Vanderbilt. They're going 7-6. He now is passing that mantle down to one of his assistants who was underneath him while he was calling set plays. That kind of is a thing that makes me think about how what I think Brent Venables is going to end up doing next season. That this year he's going to run it. We'll see success from it. And then he's going to pass it down to Nate Dreiling and Wes Goodwin and let them run his defense. But that's kind of crazy to see that that's what Clark had to do, because remember, he comes in and takes the job. He's 2-10 his first year, 5-7 the next season, 2-10 the third year, and then last season they go to a bowl game and they win in the Birmingham Bowl, 7-6. It's pretty darn good when everything was just falling apart for him. You saw a little success in 22. I mean, you go 5-7, 2-6 in conference, you win 2 conference games. It's a big deal, but you have. Your goal is to get to what James Franklin got you, back-to-back 9-4 seasons. Granted, Pavia's only got 1 year left, so you've only got one opportunity to do that. But the Pavia thing to me is very intriguing. That if he can get them to 9 wins, dog.
I mean, he's
Vanderbilt's done it. It's just not common.
Yeah, no, and I will say this going into last year, I think that we saw a lot of the coaching rankings, going in it, and Clark Lee was right back there with Jeff Levy in the, which one is the most successful coach, and that was dude who hasn't done anything yet. So, I mean, Clark Lee throws out 9 wins. I would venture to say he's probably not at Vandy anymore. I would say that he is getting looked at by several other programs. And somebody's gonna poach him off. Somebody's gonna pay that. That's what's gonna happen. But again,
gonna try to snatch him up.
Diego Pavia and Clark Lee have 2 guys in Oklahoma talking about Vanderbilt on July 27th.
Hey man, that's the beauty of this conference, dog. Top to bottom, this conference has got a lot of intriguing storylines to really dive into. Last one. And I saw somebody point this in here. I'm going to jump into these questions that I've had start on here. Chuck asked the question about Scott DiBendito wrote an article about John Mateer. It's his pro football analysis on him on DraftWire at USA Today. This was intriguing. This is what he basically said. He says, of course, Mateer's smaller, 6'1", 224, but it allows him to be shifty. His awareness in traffic is just average, as he'll let pocket compress and engulf him, but there is a flash of brilliance when he finds daylight in tight spaces. He thinks his pass is below average, and that's because the air raid was very much quicker and in rhythm. He rarely had legitimate dropbacks or whatnot. His arm strength and accuracy are average, with the latter barely getting there. He has adequate zip from a clean pocket with a solid base. His accuracy is barely average, and he's a highly effective ball carrier. So overall is an excellent college quarterback who makes things happen in chaos and is a threat with. However, it's tough to imagine his game translates in NFL or even the SEC. I like that he said he's an exciting college quarterback. But Chuck, I think this dude's all over the place when it comes to this statement that he doesn't think it's going to translate to the SEC when we've literally seen other quarterbacks do that. Hell, Diego Pavia just did it. We just talked for like the last 12 minutes. Coop, what you think about all the stuff I just told you?
Well, my coworker, Mr. Scott, I may have to, maybe I'm gonna have to try to get him on the podcast too here. I listen. I work for this company, right? This is USA Today. You gotta do hot takes, and Mateer's a hot take right now. Or the other, whether you're going to take a shot at him or you're going to prop him up. I will say this is he was he was one of the top two or three, whatever it is, top, depending on whatever you're looking at, quarterbacks in the transfer portal this year. Mm-hmm. He was the one that I wanted out of everybody. I would take him every day of the week over Carson Beck.
Oh yeah.
I've got there's some conversations around who he played last year. Washington was number 28 in overall defense. He played a lot of guys, right in the 40 to 50, Tech, Boise State, Fresno State, Oregon State. Like those guys, those were all decent defenses. I believe it was the Boise State game to where it was a massive, massive comeback. And say this is I think that dude squats 600 pounds. He reminds Jay, you've said it. He reminds you of Jalen Hurts, whenever he's running the ball. He also is going to, and I think what's going to happen, we're going to see it this year. He had Ryan Williams, who was a wide receiver, or Kyle Williams, wide receiver. Chris, he went third round in the NFL draft. Chris Hudson, another guy, 5'11", 174. He transferred to Arizona. He's going to have better everything around him this year.
Yeah,
that's. It's just true and simple. I will say that where we saw Jackson Arnold in his inability to make a play at any point in any time, if you go and watch the Mateer film, he is a guy who. He's going to look like he's about to be sacked. And he had on 3 different occasions the Dylan Gabriel to Nick Anderson to win Texas type of pass where he takes 2 steps towards the line, looks like he's going to duck and take a sack, and then pops up and throws a phenomenal pass. He sees dudes wide open. I think that the conversation around him this year is you don't have to actually go out and win everything for this team. You need to take advantage of the opportunities in front of you. Start off the show by saying the wide receivers need to make the play that's in front of them. I think John Mateer is a guy who is you're going to see him grow up, and he is going to polish up a lot of that. I think he was 64% completion. That's got to go up. He averaged 9 yards of completion, so that's not super awesome. But I think you've got the capability of talents around him, whether it's guys on the outside like Javonte Gibson, whether it's a guy like Deion Burks that's staying in the middle. Jaden Ott, he's got 40-some-odd catches. I think he's got almost 100 catches in his career, and that's with an injury-shortened year. You're going to have a lot of options for him. Where I think that Mateer cannot be measured is his just ability to make things happen when nothing's there. And we had, coming off a year to where we had a guy who couldn't make something happen when it was staring him right in the face. We're all going to love it. Is he going to make him throws to make you go, that may have been the stupidest thing I ever seen? I think he makes a few of them, and I think that you got to live with it. It's just like Baker. You got to take the good with the bad. But our friend here all over the place, and it's a hot take. Like I said, Mateer's. A lot of people are pouncing on him and like, hey, watch out. Some people are saying Heisman. Some people are saying Offensive Player of the Year in the SEC. This dude took the other.
Next question I think is really good, leads right into this. Do you guys think we are well prepared if we have another wide receiver health crisis like last season? Caleb, I do. I 100% think that wide receiver-wise, we are in a way better situation than we were last year because we're not going to have to play a whole bunch of true freshmen this time around. We've actually got dudes that's been out there, and I think that Jones now has guys that he's had to develop and actually focus on to make this happen. I think that when you throw an Ivan Carry-On out there, of course, Jacob Jordan's going to get some run. He supposedly has been doing really good in camp over the summer or whatnot in spring. Josiah Martin is another young wide receiver who also has experience. He played at Cal. And those are guys, I'm telling you, that aren't even in the tops of your depth chart yet. Like Elijah, I think he's a true freshman. It's going to be like ridiculously good. So he's going to be up there at the top of your sheet. Same thing with the Manny Choice. But for me, I think that we are 100% in a much better position in preparation for, knock on wood, if anything happens at the wide receiver spots, but having 2 guys in the slot with Satania and Burks, having 4 guys on the outside with Kearney, Lewis, and both Gibsons, depending if they play or not. But you still got additional pieces with J. Mike also being a part of those outside guys. That's 5 dudes on the outside you feel comfortable with, and Elijah Thomas, who makes it 6. And I haven't even touched on all of the other sophomores that we have. I think we're in a way better position. Coop, what do you think?
Statistically incapable of happening again. It's just last year was so damn detrimental to just the psyche of in between the offensive line and the wide receiver. I mean, last time we saw anything injury-wise, and it wasn't this deep, it was just key components, was 2009 when Bradford and Gresham both get hurt. So I will say this, is if Elijah Thomas has to play early, that's not the same thing as Zion Kearney. I think Elijah Thomas has the capability of being a Sterling Shepard, Ryan Broyles, Clayton type of wide receiver, a guy who's going to come in here and throw 3 years together. I think that you get guys back in waves. Again, with Andrel Anthony, it being a knee thing for a speed guy, that was a tough pull because dude tore it right in the middle of the season, couldn't do anything. It just never came back. It's just not going to. I just don't see it happening. But Jay, I agree with you because I think Kearney is a really, really big sleeper for everybody. Everybody keep your eyes on it. But if you just look at guys like Satania, Keontae Lewis, 6'2", 200 pounds. You got Javonte Gibson, Jaden Gibson, Elijah Thomas, Josiah Martin, again with a lot of time. Manny Choice. If you get down to Manny Choice, that's the bottom of the barrel. And he was a highly recruited guy, and he's a freshman. You still got KJ Daniels. You still got Carry-On, who is a guy who I think is going to help out with having a quarterback who knows how to find you. But remember, please, guys, remember this. No one was scared of our offense at all. Nobody did anything. They punked our dudes at the wide receiver spot, right at the line of scrimmage. They dared us. They couldn't. We knew they couldn't. They knew we couldn't run the ball. They knew we couldn't throw the ball. So the entire defense was with 15 yards of the line of scrimmage, and we couldn't pull them out of it. I don't think that's even an option here. So I think you're going to have more opportunity for these wide receivers.
Exactly. Last good question we had in here to address. David asked a good one. I know a lot of y'all think this. Watched the podcast yesterday that Rodney and Caleb, it's Rodney Anderson, it's Caleb Kelly, put on this one Oklahoma, basically, who put the pot out. This team is going to be very special this year. We'll react to that. They're 100% spot on in what they were saying. I'm going to just tell you that right now. When we talked about Oklahoma having a chance to really be competitive for playoffs and all of that stuff, and now a lot of you won't remember this, but we talked about this in 23. Had a feeling that Dylan Gabriel was not going to come back. 2025 was the year. That was because when you get to 2025, which is the season, that's dudes with 3 to 4 years in the BV defensive system. Your class of 22 guys are now been in here for 3 years. They're your veterans. They're the ones that will be built up. And that's kind of the trajectory that a Brent Venables defense has always taken. Most of the staff, remember, came with him from Clemson, except for B. Hall and Valai. But they basically had a whole bunch of dudes with them from Clemson, and the way they did things there was roughly by the time the fourth season came up, his defensive line and his defenses were top 10 easily. Well, last year, efficiency-wise, we were top 15 in everybody's and in some top 10. So that tells you that we're at that point. We're at that trajectory we expected. Well, 25 now. And basically Rodney and Caleb were saying, hey, they got all the pieces on defense that they need. We added the offensive pieces that we probably needed to make sure that we're not worse than we were last year. There's a very good chance, based upon the blue chip ratio, is also just confirming, 70%, number 9 in the country, that this team can compete as long as they don't fall apart throughout the season. I agree with them. This team is going to be a lot more special than people expect or understand because the talent is already there. Yes, I understand the 26 recruiting isn't going the way y'all want it to, but I'm telling y'all now, 26 class recruiting matter until 2028 when they're actually probably going to have to be on the field. So, Coop, how do you feel about those comments from Rodney and Caleb? And do you think this team has a chance to be special?
So you tell me Rodney Anderson, whose brother got punked by the team and left the team, thinks this team's going to be really, really good?
I mean, based upon whatever is that, yeah.
Caleb Kelly, he has, I think he's still around the team quite a bit. I know that he went the ministry route. Listen, it's happening more and more and more. And I think that the fact is it's not just the fact that this team has stepped up and filled a lot of the holes that were going on everywhere else. It's the fact that this team also has a great opportunity because of what's going on around the country. You got newness absolutely everywhere. And asterisks don't mean a damn thing to me, Jay. So if it's a weaker field this year and this team goes out and does something crazy, and somebody says, yeah, but I don't care. Everybody gets to field the team at 25. What did you do with that opportunity? And so I just go with this defense is going to be special. And with an offense that can hold its own, the defense has a lot of opportunity. Mateer's going to have a lot of short fields. You're going to be able to offense. And Jay, I don't look at a team on this schedule. I mean, tell us in the chat. Tell me what you think about it. Is there a team on the schedule that you're like, there's zero chance that we can win against that team?
BV said it perfectly. There's not a single team on this schedule where they feel like they don't have a chance. Not a single one. And I 100% agree.
It's you got to figure that this. I say the new quarterbacks. The new quarterbacks are all throughout the entire schedule. The only two returning guys you have are Lenore Sellers, and that game was over before the offense ever had to do anything. And Nussmeier. Well, Nussmeier also lost the best parts of his offensive line from last year. The first alignment off the board in Will Campbell. And so you've got all those situations. And the schedule sets up. The names on the schedule are daunting. But if you really dig in, the opportunity is there. So when someone says, "Hey, 8-4 is the floor for this team," I can't see 8-4. I don't see 4 losses on this schedule.
Me either.
And it's not a fan speaking. That's just someone who looks at the statistics and looks at everything out here. Now, what is the top end? What is the team top end capable of having? Because a lot of these guys on defense, they've done a lot of good winning for their part. This offensive side, they've not gone out and won things yet. And so I just say it's fair to say what can the offense, what's the ceiling for the offense? Because if the ceiling for the offense is significantly high, we're in the playoffs and that's what's going to happen. And it's not only the SEC, Jay. It's everywhere. Oregon starts a new quarterback. Ohio State starts a new quarterback. Any of the big time guys, it's new quarterbacks everywhere. And yes, Mateer is a new quarterback. But how many of these teams with new quarterbacks are looking at a guy who is, significantly better than what they had last year. I just don't see it. And
there's not a lot. There's not a lot. The SEC is dealing with a lot of quarterbacks since change or whatnot. Like you mentioned, there's only really 2 teams bringing back a former starter, and everybody else is breaking in new guys. And you don't know what they're going to look like until later in the season. You know, for us, we'll see a lot of you'll see like Bo Pabula from Missouri. You won't see him until one of the close to last games of the season. So you'll find out what he is then. Ty Simpson, Joey Aguilar or Jake Metzlinger for Tennessee. Like the list of them, there's a ton of them that we're dealing with. But the good thing is this defense should improve, like you said, from last year, because they're not going to have situations where they're getting the ball back immediately every single time you do something. So there's a bunch of good things lining up. But I actually believe 100% what Caleb and Rodney see, because there's a lot of opportunity there. I think there's a lot there. A lot of opportunities there. So good stuff. Good stuff. All right. Let's out of here. One more question here from KRJ. Arsenal at night with Nagy. He said, we are still going after guys who are committed elsewhere. Who do you think flips to us if we start stacking wins? I'm going to be 100% honest. I have no clue. Mainly because I know that they redid the board. And the board focus started last Tuesday with their color system and everything that they've introduced to the staff of how they're going to do it. I ain't got a clue who they decide to keep on there, who's not. I am completely flying blind, but I'll tell you this. There's a lot of top players that they are going to go after that they feel like would be worth it. Because if there's one thing that Nagy did tell me that I thought was very intriguing, he mentioned to me, and he said this in the interview with me, that fans aren't privy to what the asking price is for a lot of these players. Right, we're not privy. We don't know. He does, because he, of course, talks to all these agents and stuff. But what he said was the bigger problem you run into is that if you're going to allot that much of your rev share to that player, they better be playing. You don't want them sitting on your bench. Is there anybody in the freshman class for 2026 that you think should be starting in 2026 on your roster? I don't know yet. I haven't dug that deep into it, but that's where their question is. But I do think they do flip some guys. Cool.
And I say this, Jay, is I've heard, look at the line. I think that wide receiver is probably a conversation that gets had. But I will say this. If you go out and you pay somebody, let's go with a big defensive lineman this year. Coming for next year. This defensive line is young. You lose G-Baby and Dom Williams, and that's it from this year, unless somebody just, goes payday. So you would be paying close to $750,000 to $1 million for a defensive lineman, and you run into the David Stone situation, where David wasn't bad. He just had a lot of traffic out in front of him. And so you pay a massive chunk of your rev share, which means you can't go after somebody else. And then year 2, you try to have the conversation, hey, man, we gave you this money. This year 2 money is X because you didn't have much last year, and potential's there for you to go up. And then dude says, I'm out. So now you just paid a guy a bunch of money for 1 year just to see him exit in the transfer portal.
Yeah.
Those are the situations that you're seeing. Those are what you're dealing with. You look at guys all across the place, and that's what's going to happen. So if you go after for a guy for 26, is it a guy that you think is going to be able to come in and play for the dollar that they're asking? And you hear it all across the board, all these other podcasts, it's the same situation, Jay. Very, very plain and simple. Is, Taj Overton. Taj Overton wanted a dollar figure from us that we were not willing to give. Wasn't going to see the field next year. So I would just say this is there's a lot of conversations and a lot of negative recruiting that's going on. You go listen to PG, you go listen to guys who really just do recruiting heavy. Josh McQuistion. Brent Venables ain't going to be there. A lot of the stuff that they're being told. I think that if that conversation wasn't happening with Cruel, I think he's in the fold. So you go out and put it on the field, and all of a sudden, every bit of that negative recruiting that kind of just kept guys from pulling the trigger and coming to OU, they're back on the table. And I will say this, just on the absolute other side of the coin. You go out and it doesn't work this year, and you throw out 7 wins. It doesn't matter anyway, because you're going to have more negative recruiting. You know, he did it again. Now what? And I will just say this: let's take away year 1, because we all know that you're coming in and just hoping that there's something left in the cupboard at that point. But year 2, you go 10-2. Year 3, you have injuries galore. If Brent Venables is who we all think he is, he's done the things that we think that he's done, there's a lot of happiness that's going to be happening. And I know that I've already seen it here in the chat, Jay. There's a lot of receipts. A lot of folks have receipts. Because It's not just the fact that we struggled last year. It's the fact that we struggled and Texas did so well. And now Texas is getting that hype. You go out and you put it on the field this year, and now it's the conversation back again to where, you know, this team belongs where they're at. And I think that this is a year that you have a lot of great opportunity in front of you.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun season. All right, we're out of here. Thank y'all for pulling up. Hit that like button if you need to subscribe, rate us, review us, give us 5. And me and Coop will be back maybe on Wednesday. We'll see how the schedules align. We may go ahead and go live and talk about the first day of fall camp, because I know every single one of us is going to be excited. So we'll chop it up with each and every single one of y'all in the next day or 2, possibly. We'll talk soon. Peace.